A very good morning to you. Welcome to the West Ham Voice on a Friday morning. The morning after the night before. Yes, we played our penultimate game in the group stages of the Europa League against TSC, and we won. Wow, we did it. We're still top of that league. We had to win in order to stay top of that group, and we did it. But let's be honest with you, it was not a fun-filled event, was it? We didn't play well. We were quite lackluster yet again, and we relied on yet again another last-minute goal in order to get us the points that we really needed. I don't know what's going on. Do you? Because I'm sure we've got the ability, West Ham United, to play a decent game of football and get the result we need. So I'm going to sort of like try and understand and tear down why we're not doing that. Look. We did it just by the skin of our teeth, and we are top. We're still top of the group. And just to inform you, I didn't really know this until the other week. The reason why we're still top, despite Freiburg scoring goals for fun, is because it goes on head to head. So the fact that we beat Freiburg earlier in the group stages means that we're still top. So what we need is just a point in the last game against Freiburg when we play them in a couple of weeks' time in order to win the group outright. And that's exactly what we want to do, because if we don't win that game, if we lose that game, we could end up, we will end up in the playoffs. So we've qualified anyway. But by coming second in the group stage means that we will end up having to meet a team that drops down from the Champions League in a two-legged playoff in February. So that's why it's really important to keep going and to try and get the win that we need in order to stay on top of the group at the end of the 6 games. We win the group. That means we avoid any playoff in February and we go straight into the knockout stages in March. So it's important that we get a result that's going to be positive for us when we play Freiburg in a few weeks' time. Look, we started the game off quite brightly. We have started a lot of games quite brightly. First 10, 15, 20 minutes, we seem to be okay. And then we drift after that. And like we have done in most games, and we don't seem to make the most of those decent starts. And then we seem to, as the game wears on, we seem to start running out of ideas. And when we start running out of ideas, we actually go for a plan B. Yes, we do have a plan B. And that, of course, is to launch the ball into the 18-yard box in the hope that we get a goal out of that. And that's happened for us in the last 3 games. And in the last 3 games, the player on the end of those balls has been Thomas Souček. He did it yet again on the 89th minute in this game against TSC. But if the long ball is an effective way of playing football and scoring goals, then why don't we do this sooner rather than later? Why do we go through the pain barrier of 60, 70, 80 minutes of trying to pass the ball, not getting through in any way? It's always sideways, backwards, really slow. And then we seem to find ourselves in a position where we've run out of time and we've got to hoof it into the box in order to try and get a goal. Now, you're going to laugh, but this is my theory. My theory is that David Moyes really does mean it when he says he wants to play more possession-based football. I think he does want that. I think he does want the team to be more possession-based. But I think one main reason, I think maybe quite a few reasons, but I think for one main reason alone, I think the reason why Moyes is not getting, or we're not getting, that possession-based football is because we lack pace in the team. We've got some pacey players in the team. I think Emerson is. I think, Antonio can be. Kudus is, etc. But on the whole, not only do we sort of lack pace throughout the team, but we also lack our ability to pass the ball quickly as well. We seem to be quite flat in, we when we're counter-attacking, I think we do that quite well. We pass the ball quickly and it's fine. When we've got possession of the ball, we don't seem to be able to move the ball quickly enough and move players quickly enough in order to cause problems to opposition. And I think that happened even with the likes of TSC, who were clearly going to come out defending. It caused us problems. We couldn't find a way of being able to penetrate their defense, and that's because we seem to have a lack of pace. Now, what's interesting is the players with pace weren't playing. Kudus, Bowen, Antonio, Emerson, all players with a little bit of pace were absent for one reason or another. And when it came to sort of like having pace in the team against TSC, it was lacking. Now we look at the stats of the game, and you could do stats, and more stats, and you could see it was a boring game. 2 shots on target for each team. We had 3 shots wide. They had 2 shots. But I guess and we had 59% possession as well. But I guess the stat that really counts, as I said, is the stat of the ball going in the net. And Thomas Souček put in that performance yet again, getting on the end of a ball and putting us in the lead. Then thank goodness for that. Now, what about some performances? Now, I think some players didn't perform that well. If you look at the team selection, I almost got it right, apart from the fullbacks. I was really, really surprised that Ben Johnson started ahead of Thilo Kehrer, and very surprised that Aaron Creswell started ahead of Emerson. I predicted that it was going to be Emerson at the back and Thilo Kehrer at the back alongside Mavropanos and Agurd. Creswell was a complete surprise to me, but obviously Emerson is fine because he came on later in the game. But we did hear that in addition to Antonio, Bowen, Kudus, and Alvarez missing the game, we were told really late that Coufal was also going to miss the game. Now, I don't know if he's got an injury or a knock or a virus as well or whatever, but the only reason I can assume that Thilo Kehrer didn't start in this game is because he's going to be kept fresh for the game against Crystal Palace at the weekend. Now, unless I hear otherwise, I'm going to assume that Coufal may miss the game on Sunday. Now, we know that, or we've been told that Bowen should make it, Kudus should be back, Alvarez should be back, but maybe, just maybe, Coufal may not make the game. Hence why Ben Johnson was played in this game against TSC, and Thilo Kehrer was kept fresh on the bench so that he can be available for the game on Sunday. I'm imagining that must be the only reason, because I can't think for the life of me why Ben Johnson would be favoured over Thilo Kehrer. I mean, Ben Johnson's out of favour. He hasn't played a game for quite some time. Yes, he had an injury early on in the season, but he hasn't played a game for quite some time. So my only assumption is I can't imagine Thilo Kehrer dropping down the pecking order below Ben Johnson. So my only assumption is that Coufal could be injured for Sunday and Kehrer was kept on the bench in order to be fresh for the game coming up against Crystal Palace. Now, some performances. I sort of mentioned, you saw a photo going up a moment ago. I was pleased to see the likes of Pablo Fornals and other players like Ben Rama and Mubama be given game time, starting the game. I was pleased. But I don't think any of those three really had a decent game in any way. To be quite honest with you, I think Fornals was solid, but not very creative. I think Ben Rama, I don't know what's happened to Ben Rama. He's fallen off quite a bit recently. He had an opportunity to square it, ironically, the ball to Fornals in order to score. But Ben Rama went for the shot. He often does that. And his shot was quite weak and it didn't sort of come to anything. And I think he had a disappointing game. I think Fornals did. And Mubama, I was pleased for him. It would have done him the world of good. It would have boosted his ego to have actually got a start. But again, I don't think he really sort of did much. Certainly when you compare the game that he played against Burnley at the weekend, the half an hour that he came on for, I think he did exceptionally well, closing down defenders, etc. I think maybe he's now finding out playing a full 90 minutes in the senior team is quite different prospect altogether. But I was glad that he was given game time. I think that bodes well. Will we see? Is that the last we see of Mubama with Bowen and Kudus coming back? Look, when it comes to him starting a game, possibly for the time being, you won't see him start another game for some time. But will he disappear from the ether? I don't think so. I think he'll be on the subs bench. I think he'll get more game time. I do think now he's ahead of Danny Ings in the pecking order. And I think we will start seeing more of Mubama in the Premier League. So I think it was good that David Moyes gave him that opportunity to shine, and I'm pleased for him. The other players that started, the regulars, you could argue, Souček, Ward-Prowse and Paqueta, they were there. But again, they all didn't really sort of put in fantastic performances. I don't think anyone really played that well against TSC. And okay, it is more difficult when you're playing against a team that sits back. It is more difficult to penetrate, and try and get through them. But then that's when good players come into the fray. So I don't think anyone really had a really decent game against TSC, but we got the result that we needed, and that's good. Now, in terms of team selection, there's a big argument. There's a catch-22 going on, isn't there? Because there's one camp that goes, well, you've got to play the squad players. They've got to get game time. They've got to be ready for upcoming games in case regular starters in the Premier League are injured, etc. Otherwise, how are you going to be inclusive, etc., etc.? And then there's the other argument of, well, you should just play your best team and go out and win the game. And then if you want to bring some other players on, you do so later in the game. And that could be said of, if Coufal was available, why didn't Coufal start? Why didn't Zuma start? Areola could have started, Emerson could have started, etc. So there is an argument for that. But I think it's a real mixture, isn't it? I think we should have had more than enough to beat TSC. This lineup should have been more than enough to get, not to scratch a win out of it, but I think we should have been better and we should have got maybe a 2 or 3 goal win. But anyway, moving on, why is it that we do not seem to break down teams as well as we can? Look, I think it's an interesting scenario, and I think I might have the answer. Like I said earlier on the show, I think pace is important. I think we do lack it. We have players with pace, like Emerson, like Antonio, like Bowen, like Kudus, etc. But when they don't play, I think we then lack pace completely, and that's one of the reasons why I think we made it difficult for ourselves in the game against TSC. We lacked pace, but then you could argue that, hang on a minute, when we have Kudus in the team and Bowen in the team, etc., we still don't seem to penetrate teams. So it's more about the tactics, isn't it? And maybe I think people have a valid point when it comes to talking about tactics. Maybe they are set up to just take it easy and pass the ball sideways and backwards, etc., etc. And that does make for poor display, poor games. But we know we've got pace. We know we can do it. We know we can play well. And we have demonstrated that earlier on in the season, for example, when we played the likes of Brighton, Chelsea, Arsenal in the Cup, etc. We were playing with pace and we were playing on the front foot. Even if we didn't have as much possession of the ball, when we got it, we were moving with it pretty quickly. And I think it's mainly to do with maybe the formation that David Moyes has adopted. Now, earlier in the season, we were playing more of 4-1-4-1, with Edson Alvarez being that pivot between the defence and midfield. And what's happened of late, and maybe because of some of the poor results that we had in October, Moyes has reverted to type and he's gone to a 4-2-3-1. And we know the two is going to be Alvarez and Ward-Prowse. And I think that detracts from what Ward-Prowse is capable of doing. When we had a 4-1-4-1, we were 4 players closer to the front player, offering him more support, and we could move the ball quicker with that one extra player moving forward, more attack-minded. Now a 4-2-3-1, when we get the ball, it's like, we've dropped deep, and there's only whoever. Antonio up front, and the closest player to him is probably at the halfway line. There's no fluidity, that you can't get that pace going with that kind of setup. When you play a defensive 4-2-3-1, I think that dropping too deeply stops you from being able to move that ball quickly. And I think it's a shame. But also, like I said, when we're lacking certain players, we don't have that pace as well. So there is something about tactics, and there is something about team selection where we lack pace. Now, I looked at the game Freiburg played against TSC when they thrashed them 5-0. I looked at the highlights to see how they did it, and that's where I came with this epiphany that pace is all that it really does matter. Because what Freiburg did is they really carved TSC open because they had the pace in their team to do so. If you remember in their game against us, Freiburg, when they brought Doan on, the Japanese international, down the right flank, that's where they got their goal from, because all of a sudden they had pace, they were moving quicker, moving, as a unit, moving forward quicker, moving the ball quicker, etc. And that caused us problems. We don't do that. We don't seem to do that. We don't seem to have that penetrative pace that can put us on the front foot against teams. And I think that is partly to do with tactics, but it's also partly to do with the type of players that we've got. Now, in order to get pace, we're going to have to either buy it in or bring some of the youth players in order to give us that ability to move the ball quicker, etc. But there is a player that impressed me in his cameo role against TSC that I think we've got to start making more use of, and that is Maxwell Cornet. I mean, not only did he cross the ball brilliantly to give the opportunity for Soucek to score the winner, I think Cornet, he's got pace to burn out, and it doesn't matter that he plays out on the wing. He can play as a wing back, he can play out on the left side, and of course he can play up front. And I think maybe it might be the time now to start thinking about using Cornet much more. Now, I alluded to perhaps that we're trying to protect him from this injury that he had and, using him sparingly. But let's start using him a bit more sparingly in the Premier League as well. I think, Mubama should get more game time. I don't think Ings should. But when you've got a choice to make up front and you need to make a change and you need to inject a little bit of pace into our front line, then why not Cornet? Why not give him that opportunity? I remember some of the earlier games before his injury, Chelsea game away last season. This man does have pace. All right, he's always offside, but I'm sure he can learn to stay on the right side of offside at times. But I think Maxwell Cornet I think it would have done him the world of good. It would have given him a massive boost to not only play in the game against TSC on Thursday night, but also to create the goal for us as well. I think that would have given him a massive boost, and I think maybe it's his time, and he could become the difference for us moving forward with a bit more pace in the squad. Thank you all for listening to my rants. I hope you enjoyed it. Do hit the like button, the subscribe button, and the bell notification if you haven't already done so. I'll be back again. Of course, we've got our game against Crystal Palace coming up. So I'll put a little bit of a show together to talk about Palace and the threat that they offer against us. And look out for that. I don't know when it will be, either later on Friday or maybe Saturday. But have a great weekend, and I'll see you all very, very soon.